possibly starting to see how not fun this has been, Pauline. So, we continue, I suppose. On the Constitution Act. We've already gone through the preamble or the introductory text. We also hit the Constitution at Clause 9 and went to the scheduled oath. We also demonstrated Justice Lonergan and the Crimes Act New South Wales. So we demonstrate a true line of authority, don't we? A true line of authority. And we demonstrated that you were silent on matters of executive government because that was Chapter 2 of the Constitution, wherein you fit in at Chapter 1 of the Constitution, the Parliament, at Part 2, the Senate. Right, so qualification of electors. Let's pop in there quickly. Qualification of electors. The qualification of electors of senators shall be in each state that which is prescribed by this Constitution or by the Parliament as the qualification for electors of members of the House of Representatives, but in the choosing of senators, each elector shall vote only once. Okay, so for the same for the House of Representatives. And when we get to the House of Representatives, we get... Where's that one here? Provisions as to races disqualified from voting. Section 25. Provision as to races disqualified from voting. The purposes as the last section, if by the law of any state or persons of any race are disqualified from voting at elections for more numerous House of Parliament of the state, then, in reckoning the number of the people of the state or of the Commonwealth, persons of that race resident in that state shall not be counted. Does this still exist in relation to Section 127, Pauline? How does the Parliament see Section 25 in relation to the House of Representatives? That's an interesting question, given that it's in relation to race. Qualification of electors. Section 30, qualifications of electors. Until the Parliament otherwise provides, the qualification of electors of members of the House of Representatives shall be in each state that which is prescribed by the law of the state as the qualification of electors of the more numerous House of Parliament of the state, but in the choosing of members, each elector shall vote only once. So, both relative to the seating of the state, I presume? Right, but we get to this executive government, and we discuss this line of authority, this true line of authority to something imperial at faith, at the God level, at the reliance of this blessing. So if we go on to Section 61, executive power, the executive power of the Commonwealth is vested in the King and is exercisable by the Governor-General as the King's representative and extends to the execution and maintenance of this Constitution and the laws of the Commonwealth. So this King vested in, the power of the Commonwealth is vested in the King. Which King, Pauline? Did we define that on the Supreme Court record through the Crimes Act New South Wales 1900 Section 12? Is that why you all don't mention my name? Shh! Don't mention his name. Because he might have the vested power of the executive branch of the Constitution and extend to the execution and maintenance of the very Constitution itself and of the laws of the Commonwealth formed by the Parliament under this Constitution itself. Okay, and then 62. Ooh, 62, Pauline. Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act Section 62, Federal Executive Council. There shall be a Federal Executive Council to advise the Governor-General in the Commonwealth of Australia, and the members of the Council shall be chosen and summoned by the Governor-General and sworn as Executive Councillors and shall hold office during his pleasure. during his pleasure, that true line of authority and crown and kingdom, Pauline. So let's just now look at something else. I'll bring that up. We go click through. We go to some files now, and we bring up a file. Okay, abolition of the office of Prime Minister. We already saw this, Pauline. Commonwealth of Australia Gazette, published with authority by Australian Government Publishing Service. Number 28, Canberra, Monday, 15th of March, 1971. Abolition and establishment of departments and related matters. His Excellency the Governor-General in Council, in the Federal Executive Council, has been pleased to approve the abolition in pursuance of Section 64 of the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Australia of the following Departments of State of the Commonwealth. Departments of State of the Commonwealth. Departments of State of the Commonwealth, namely A, the Prime Minister's Department, and B, the Department of the Cabinet Office. Now, if we go back to that Constitution, Pauline, and they quoted 64 Ministers of State, the Governor-General may appoint officers to administer such departments of state of the Commonwealth as the Governor-General in Council may establish. Such officers shall hold office during the pleasure of the Governor-General. So the Prime Minister holds office at the pleasure of the Governor-General, and the Prime Minister in Cabinet holds office at the pleasure of the Governor-General in the Federal Executive Council. So they overrule and override everything, Pauline. They shall be members of the Federal Executive Council and shall be the Queen's Ministers of State for the Commonwealth. The Queen's, so that should then read the King's Ministers of the Imperial Crown of State of the Commonwealth, really. Ministers to sit in Parliament. After the first general election, no Minister of State shall hold office for a longer period than 3 months unless he is or becomes a senator or member of the House of Representatives. So the Prime Minister must be a member of the House of Representatives. So all of these officers must then be a member of the House of Representatives. So we can see through Section 64 that they've manipulated the Commonwealth under foreign executive power, Pauline. The establishment in pursuance of Section 64 of the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Australia, the following departments of the state, namely the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet. So that they merged the two offices they closed, Pauline, together. And then they gave rise to the Department of the Vice President of the Executive Council to overrule the Cabinet, which had now been merged with the Prime Minister's office, Pauline. The abolition in pursuance of Public Service Act 1922, 1968 of the Office of the Secretary, the Office of the Secretary, and all 2nd, 3rd and 4th Division officers, and all 2nd, 3rd and 4th Division officers. So basically abolished not just the Prime Minister's department, but all departments that fell underneath the Prime Minister's department, and the Office of Cabinet, and all officers that fell underneath the Office of the Cabinet, and replaced them with the Vice President of the Executive Council instead. And that's where all the power comes from, Pauline. Like we can see it here, 1971. Not 1971. And then in 1973, there's that whole Great Seal of Australia problem. Whole Great Seal of Australia problem where we now have a foreign executive in the foreign executive branches of government. Without a line of authority, Pauline. Because if we go back to Section 61, right? Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act, Section 61, executive power. The executive power of the Commonwealth is vested in the King. The executive power of the Commonwealth is vested in the King and is exercisable by the Governor-General as the King's representative and extends to the execution and maintenance of the Constitution and the laws of the Commonwealth. That would mean that the executive power of the Commonwealth is vested in myself, Pauline, at law. Like totally at law on the Supreme Court record at law, Section 61. So following any foreign curial power in the matter, it would be what? Treason, right? Would be going outside of Section 44, disqualification. Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act Section 44, disqualification. Any person is under any acknowledgement of allegiance, obedience, or adherence to a foreign power. You mean that St Edward's Crown, Pauline? You mean that St Edward's Crown, Pauline? You mean that foreign executive branch that's inside the executive branches of the Constitution, Pauline? Or is subject or a citizen, Luke 15:14-15. Did you board some foreign vessel power as a citizen in your own land? Right? And then become not eligible for the Constitution to sit as a senator? Does that mean you're disqualified as a senator right now, like totally right now, according to law, entitled to the rights and privileges of a subject or citizen of a foreign power, being that St Edward's Crown with a foreign curial anchoring to a stone of destiny in Scotland and in, travelling to England? Is it tainted of treason? Could that be considered treason? Could it? So, has been convicted or is under sentence or subject to be sentenced for any offence punishable under the law of the Commonwealth or of a state by imprisonment for 1 year or longer, or, are we looking at all these criminal offences that we've pointed out, Pauline, like serious criminal offences? Is an undischarged bankrupt or insolvent? So this is where we could look at section 115, Pauline, and ask you about your reserve currencies that you peddle and whether you take them as salaries or not. Do you take reserve bank currencies as salaries, Pauline? Is that being an undischarged bankrupt or being insolvent? Is that a burden on the state, Pauline, according to law? Holds any office of profit under the Crown or any pension payable during the pleasure of the Crown. So we already proved this to be the Imperial Crown, which we have a right to, of which you are foreign curial to, out of the revenues of the Commonwealth. So do you hold any office that takes a profit out of the Commonwealth from acknowledgement of allegiance, obedience or adherence to a foreign power, Pauline? Like at law? At law, Pauline. Like totally at law, Pauline. Has any direct or indirect pecuniary interest in any agreement with the public service of the Commonwealth otherwise than as a member and in common with any other members of an incorporated company consisting of more than 25 persons? So what would be this Australia under the Great Seal of Australia, Pauline? Is that a company of good men or bad men? Right, that's not the Great Seal of the Commonwealth of Australia according to law, Pauline. According to law, shall be incapable of being chosen or sitting as a senator or a member of the House of Representatives. But subsection 4 does not apply to the office of any of the Queen's Ministers of State for the Commonwealth, or King's Ministers. So is Albo the King's Minister or not, Pauline, according to law? According to law. Because this is the real question, isn't it? According to law. Right? So this would then bring into question something else, wouldn't it, Pauline? This would bring into question not only the appointment of civil servants, but 68, Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act, Section 68. Command of naval and military forces. The Command-in-Chief of the naval and military forces of the Commonwealth is vested in the Governor-General as the King's representative. Does the Governor-General represent the true line of authority in the Constitution, Pauline? Does the Governor-General represent the true line of authority in the Constitution, Pauline? This is a very, very stark question, given what Justice Lonergan has defined on the court record and what I've laid out in front of you. Right, and then we get to the states, don't we? Because certain powers of governors to vest in the Governor-General. That puts a line of authority in the states, Pauline, to the Governor-General of the Commonwealth, Pauline. And that puts that eugenics and that direct act of war criminal action against the international humanitarian law, Rule 92, directly on the table, Pauline. Directly on the table. in respect of matters which, under this Constitution, pass to the executive government of the Commonwealth, all powers and functions which at the establishment of the Commonwealth are vested in the governor of a colony or in the governor of a colony with the advice of his executive council, the executive council of that colony, or in any authority of a colony, like a courtroom, Pauline, like a Supreme Court of New South Wales courtroom, Pauline, or the Governor-General and Council and the authority exercising similar powers under the Commonwealth as the case requires, like under a Supreme Court of New South Wales courtroom, defining a true line of authority in the Constitution, its very self, where now we go back to section 61 again, don't we, Pauline? The executive power. The executive power of the Commonwealth is vested in the King with a true line of authority and is exercisable by the Governor-General as the King's representative and extends to the execution and maintenance of this Constitution and of the laws of this Commonwealth. Okay, that's very clear. That's very clear given what we've already defined on the court record, Pauline. And this brings to the fore international war crimes and a eugenics model which could be looked at in so many spiritual ways. And then we look at what you've done in relation to the voice, and we come down to section 116, don't we? Commonwealth is not to legislate in respect of religion. Just try and undermine the executive branch where at section 61 that power lies with myself, doesn't it, Pauline, at law? At law, Pauline. Right, so Commonwealth of Australia Act, section 116. Commonwealth not to legislate in respect of religion. The Commonwealth shall not make any law for establishing any religion, or for imposing any religious observance, or for prohibiting the free exercise of any religion, and no religious test shall be required as a qualification for any office or public trust under the Commonwealth. Now, this is in here to stop you from undermining the very line of authority that's established in section 61, Pauline. Now, if we go to section 61 again, I'll just read those words. The executive power of the Commonwealth is vested in the King. It is vested in the King. Now, we could go back to Quick and Garran and look at that prerogative right over this, because that was detailed in Quick and Garran, wasn't it? Okay, so we could also go to the preamble here, and ominously, so the leading texts, humbly relying on the blessing of Almighty God, have agreed to unite. Humbly relying on the blessing of Almighty God, have agreed to unite. Like, I don't see any other way there that they've agreed to unite, unless you attempt to undermine section 61 of the Constitution itself. Is that what Albo's doing? The executive power of the Commonwealth is vested in the Queen, and that's where we talk about this Victorian Parliament, right? When it's already defined at law that there's a line of authority and an imperial crown anchored in the very King's domain itself, Pauline, at which a line of authority extends out to that very Victorian Parliament, demonstrative of the crown on the little wooden box that they all hover above when they go and speak at that little box. They all go and speak at that little box, Pauline, and it's got the imperial crown on it. And if they all went down to the Shrine of Remembrance and looked at the door, Pauline, it would have the same crown on it, wouldn't it? It would totally have the same crown on it, wouldn't it? So we're starting to look at some really simplistic views of what should be a legal document that you're all treating like a clown show, thinking that we on the outside here with a line of authority into our document, not your document, it's our document, and you think you can muck around from a foreign curial power and play these games with our document that we live by? That's kind of amusing, given that I have the proper curial power in that document and my men stand in that curial power within that document. Because if we go back to that preamble, Pauline, we just go back to this preamble before we sign off, right? Have agreed to unite in one indissoluble federal commonwealth under the crown of the United Kingdom of Australia. And we get there through a line of history, don't we? a history you can't deny. And then the last part, under the Constitution hereby established, where at section 61, their king has the executive power in the very Constitution itself, because the imperial power defined at the Bill of Rights 1688 and the Act of Settlement 1700 as a birthright to them. It's their birthright that you're trying to take away from them, Pauline, and I don't think they're going to have it. I just don't think they're going to have it. I don't think they're going to see you turn their constitution into an Israeli apartheid with financial warmongers that are sitting behind you. I just think they're starting to realise what you've all done in that parliament there and created a grave act of treason, undermining them, a grave war crime, committing eugenics across a global battlefield, Pauline, a global battlefield wherein you chose to work with eugenicists that used messenger RNA to corrupt DNA, the God particle of man himself. And these people sought to undermine and corrupt that very God particle of man himself with their eugenics and their messenger RNAs. What messages would these people be wanting to corrupt a society with, Pauline? What messages would these people be wanting to corrupt a society with, Pauline?